Just teasing.
Call this meeting to order. Approve the agenda. Mover and secondary, is there any additions? I'll move. Second. What in favor? Yep. Okay. Any conflicts of interest disclosures? Nope. Okay, Amanda, Blue Trails update.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm just going to give a brief update on the Blue Trails project that has been ongoing. So there's been really good progress made with the Blue Trails project. As a review, the scope includes an overview map with access points, waterway assets, and whatnot in the region. We'll get a list of stakeholders and interviews with potential partners and a strategic report with recommendations and proposed assets to explore in the future. Paddling route mapping is being undertaken by Fredericton Capital Region Tourism, so that's not within the scope of this project. James Donald from Explore Everywhere Media has spoken now with 13 of the 14 municipalities. 13 municipalities, one service district. Six conservation groups, 5 businesses, has had 13 site visits, and the asset and water access point map is 98% complete. He's mapped over 100 access points in the region. The next steps will be contacting the remaining businesses and more users, confirming ownership of the key water access points, completing a full stakeholder and partnership list, and moving on to the strategic analysis section of the project. So far, there's key learnings and challenges that are emerging that include where the majority of the access points are, what the keystone assets in the waterway network are, what are the biggest challenges in developing the Blue Trail network in the region, and where the greatest needs are for future assets and partnerships. This will be explored more in the next step. I also have more details about any of this, so if anyone's interested, I can give more detailed updates. We have monthly meetings with him, so we get pretty detailed reports. So the halfway point of this project is in November. At that point, we're going to ask James Donald to come in and speak to the committee to give an overview of the process so far in a bit more detail than I've been giving. And that's all I have right now, unless there's any questions.
Do you have any questions? Barry?
Amanda, are there any standards that have been agreed upon to be considered an access point as to what could be considered an access point?
Yeah, so some of the outcomes that are emerging are something is considered an access point, but it's right next to a DTI bridge, so it's, you know, the ownership is more what is being focused on of the access points and less so the kind of the standard. But we're also making sure, you know, what's considered an access point. It will specify if it can be accessible by boat and trailer, or can it only be accessible by kayak. We're making sure that people don't show up, you know, with a boat and trailer to somewhere that you have to walk a kayak in, pretty much. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was able to get around to a few of them this summer, and I found some of them like, yeah, there's access, but there's no place to then park or feel comfortable
Yep.
parking.
absolutely, yeah.
So that's just a.
Yep.
Just a
Yep.
observation, I guess, but it's great that they're starting to see them more.
For sure. Yeah, no, that's excellent feedback. And yeah, we've been talking about that with James as well. For example, there's on Lower Coytown Road in Gagetown, there's an access point that's considered a boat ramp, and it's really not. It's just a kind of paddling spot. So yeah, so that is being taken into consideration. And at the end, all of the different assets will be ranked, or he suggested that by the end of the project, we could rank all the different access points as well. So high, medium, and low value, pretty much.
How is the Blue Trails going to fit in with our work that we're doing there with our invasive species?
So that's a great question. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair. Last week, we had a meeting with the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council, with the Economic Expansion Committee. James Donald, who is the contractor doing the project for us, he was invited to that meeting, and he was put in contact with the New Brunswick Invasive Species Council, and he's following up with them a little bit more to make sure there's a little bit of that kind of sustainable factor factored into the Blue Trails project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Chair, just on that, I just want to back to Member Sinclair's point through you, Mr. Chair. And it's also a good opportunity when the rankings come out, Grant, that they would have that opportunity to for communities to assess whether or not there's landing points there, whether there's land that they could lease, or maybe they could even purchase. They could have some development, or some a developer can utilize that land as well. So there's going to be a mixture in there, and from the economic development standpoint, it's very positive. Much similar to what Grand Lake did with Princess Park when they were able to reacquire that property. So it may not be a big economic engine, but it is an economic development opportunity to create employment and to create opportunity in their area, the region. So, help drive tourism as well.
And can I ask one more question? Would if we were to purchase 2 wharves on Grand Lake, would that be considered a regional expense?
I guess, Mr. Chair, so through you, Mr. Chair, not at this point, Director Sharp. That would be a local purchase. We're trying to get to the point where we look and we recognize hopefully at some point that trail connectivity is regional in nature, whether it be blue or green or passive or active, motorized, however that works, that we can start to link, and that's what our next presentation is about within that. So I understand where you're coming from on that, and I appreciate it. But at this point, no, it'd be a local purchase.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this? Okay then. Trail connectivity presentation by Gemtech, Jihad.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, if you want to share, I'll just take it from there. The PowerPoint, if you don't mind. Right there.
Yeah, this.
So gonna be a short and hopefully sweet presentation. Work to date, as you know, we've done the inventory for sport track and cultural assets, both listed in as a list in Excel and geographically presented as well. We have the inventory of trails. The snippet is on the right hand side of the slide here. Blue Trails, Amanda provided an update there, and today we're gonna have first time you see trail connections schematic design. So it's easier to see on the handouts if you wanna have a look there. What we've done is it I'm able to share the PDF.
You have to unshare.
Unshare this one. Yeah, I think it's another here. So for those who are following us online, will it's just larger file, that's all. So this schematic here shows the trail connectivity, both ATV and snowmobile, between the various communities and the various areas of the rural district. Because the rural district is not one connected geographic area. We've broken down the areas and labeled them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And as you can see, this schematic enables communities to focus the discussions and have a more realistic, I guess, and closer look at what the potentials are. Take Harvey and Rural District 5 as an example. You can identify low-hanging fruits here because there's already a AV trail, but it's not a snowmobile trail. So that may be something to explore further, and it may be a low-hanging fruit if there's interest by the communities and by the user groups. Take this piece of trail as another example between Harvey and rural district area number 6. There is no connection today. The dotted line indicates a potential connection. But there may not be interest by the communities to explore this opportunity further, and this trail connection would not be discussed further. It could also help with long-term planning. If you look at Central York, Hanwell, and Harvey, there's the St. John Bridge, St. John River between them. So maybe again, for future planning, you'd say if another bridge is to be built, it would have provisions for connectivity for ATV or snowmobile or what have you. So this is like a quick snapshot, and we have broken down the ATV trails on this slide here. Is this being shared now? So
No, it's not being shared. I don't see anything.
So you have to go out of the,
is it better now?
That's better, yes.
Okay, sorry about that. So to recap, this schematic here shows the connections, existing connections are in hard lines and potential connections in dotted lines. And both ATV and snowmobile between the various communities and between the communities and areas of the rural district. This here is specifically for ATVs. And again, we can see the potential connections dotted. And wherever it's blue, it indicates that there's the St. John River between these communities. So the potential connection would be via bridge, basically, when it comes to ATV. For snowmobiles, slightly different because sometimes we could connect in the winter season using water bodies. So again, the intention of these schematics is to focus the discussions between interested communities and have a closer look at what is it they intend to do with maybe the existing connections, enhancements, or have them for both snowmobile and ATV, and to establish new connections and what that means in terms of next steps. So I'm gonna stop sharing this and go back to sharing the presentation to show the suggested next steps. Like I mentioned, more discussion. There are discussions about trails now at various levels between communities. Some communities are implementing connections, some other communities' connectivity is not on their radar, and others are somewhere in between. So more discussions, more focused discussions, engaging the community interest and assess the readiness. That could require communication protocols, establishing who's communicating when, the messaging, the user groups, then meeting with the stakeholders and having some surveys out, all this to again gauge the interest and assess readiness. And those who are ready and willing, we could have bilateral or multilateral discussions and then focus on the type of connection and what next steps they want to take in order to move the bar forward. This would entail more local support and buy-in, developing plans for actual connections, which include funding plans as well. So more planning. We can then report back to the infrastructure committee, all the findings. There's a simple Excel sheet that's also in the handouts, which shows all the existing connections and potential connections. We could populate this form to show more details with the outcome of these discussions, what's being done and what would be done over the next 5 to 10 years. And then establish a mechanism for accessing cost share funding streams. And it doesn't have to be necessarily then after the first 3 bullets, it could happen simultaneously. And that may lead to incentivizing communities to develop plans and discuss connectivity. Because if there are potential for cost sharing funds to develop trail connections, communities may have more appetite to do so. So it doesn't have to be the last bullet, it could happen concurrently. But definitely taking the discussions from high level to focused in on who's interested and where and when and who the stakeholders are. Before we can actually show lines on a map that would go through people's property and require right-of-ways or acquisition of land, and sometimes environmental assessment and how many stream crossing or wetland or forest we're going through and species and whatnot. So it could be offensive to some communities start drafting drawings or showing lines and connections before they express interest. So that's why we're suggesting this approach, this methodology where communication comes first. Those who are interested will come to the table with more information and more data. This concludes my presentation. Happy to take any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Jihad?
So Jihad, are you, when we're talking about, looking at, levels of interest and, are you suggesting that those discussions are initiated through the commission?
That-
I'm sorry, go ahead.
To you, Mr. Chair, the communication protocol will establish that. Is it gonna come through the commission? Is it gonna come through the consultant? So that has to be discussed and determined, but somebody has to initiate those discussions.
And the discussions would include all types of trails?
They could, my work is not focused on the blue trails. There's another consultant that's hired, but there could be, the communication protocol could include both.
So like, John, I noticed, for instance, like this state TV, normal deal, where are we showing, like, where would the trail from Fredericton or Uphill, for instance, be shown? Like,
Yeah, I mean, it's probably not explicit on that diagram, but I think if there's a line that connects it to, there's a trail of sorts. Now, we also happen to have a walking trail too, which sometimes it's shared. There's portions of ours that's also shared, but we also have the luxury of having separate trails where the one you're speaking to is largely the walking trail, which is part of that Trans-Canada Trail, yes.
but it's shared, like there's portions.
There are portions that are
which is
shared.
fine. That's just a matter, I guess not a concern, but my point would be that we want to ensure that we're depicting these trails correctly, right? Like, it's easy to say it's an ATV trail, but I mean, the reality is it's probably used a lot by, walkers, runners, bikers, whatever, right?
Yeah,
I guess the difficulty comes where, if it's the ATV Federation that's actually managing it. That's a whole other kettle of fish, right? Whether they want those folks on it and so forth, but I would think as a commission, we wanna be sort of trying to work with those folks to bolster the concept of, hey, everybody can do these things, right? And I know that, I mean, there's concerns and stuff, but, reality, in my opinion, the reality is that they've gotta be shared.
John?
Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you. And to your point, I think it's spot on. The idea would be to get the right players around the table and make sure that they're all there. That's why we're looking to put the proper protocols in. When we were looking at this in the, if you remember our summer meeting, I believe it was in June, we were talking about taking staff time and trying to do the connectivity in the region. And we come to find, I mean, it's, well, you can see, I think it's the last map in Jihad's deck. It's like the mighty oak. There's many things that overlap and intertwine. This way here, we get the right people at the table, because as we were starting to look at it internally, we reached back out to our colleagues at Gemtech, and we had a meeting, not that awful long ago, and we're looking at it. And, you know, you have to have the quad association, you have to have the snowmobile groups, you have to have the towns and the city and you know, all of those with those that trail mixture at the table, because otherwise it won't happen properly. But really what we have to do is ensure that we understand the regional interest, the community interest, the interest of the group, the user groups, the interest of the individual user, and then really work that forward to what does that look like? Because some of the communities that we represent will be, they'll be more interested in planning, you know, and looking at developing a plan to do some connectivity or develop a plan to even develop a trail. John's community, for example, they're, you know, they have professional staff that work in this area. They do a great job on it. And they can even, you know, lend some knowledge and help some of those other communities. And maybe some of those communities want to connect in with those, you know, in terms of whether it be for active, passive, motorized, whatever it may be. And then again, as Amanda had spoke to or alluded to, bring in the folks on the Blue Trail and see where that fits eventually, because I know, I don't want to speak for Director Sharp, but he has, you know, he has reason to have a strong interest in Blue Trail connectivity, or at least blue activity. And so, you know, there's a number of communities that will have a number of different interests. It's to put a plan in place and do it right. In Southeast Regional Service Commission, for example, they're doing a long-term view and investing so much each year to develop the regional connectivity and that regional trail. And it's paying dividends, both from an economic development standpoint, a tourism standpoint, and an individual activity standpoint. So, thank you, Mr. Chairs.
Okay.
Can I add one small thing, Mr. Chair? What we learned also along the way is that these trail connectivities are not fixed. The land use agreements change. New connections are being established every year, and some connection points are not available for users year after year. So it's fluid. I wanted to put this out there as well.
I think that's where we've got to sort of keep in mind, like. The reality is we've got strong user groups in terms of Quad NB and then the Brunswick Snowmobile Federation that speak on behalf of their members, and they have contracts with the through the Provincial Trails Committee with DNR or whatever it's called today, to have those sorts of agreements in place that might last 1 year, 10 years, or whatever. But they're focused on snowmobiling and ATVing. I think from a municipal perspective is municipalities have to have a lot of learnings to do, my opinion is, what my experience shows me. But I think that for this whole idea to be successful, the municipalities have to have that relationship with DNR. right? And yes, that doesn't mean you exclude Quad MV and Snowmobile Federation and so forth, but that they're speaking on behalf of their members, and rightfully so. But it leaves a lot of other potential users out in the cold. And I think a municipality or a regional service commission has to look at everybody, whether you're on a snowmobile, ATV, horse, a bike, like there isn't that. And I think that's the opportunity that we should be, or the commission should be considering along with its municipal partners, is maybe that relationship between the Provincial Trails Committee or DNR in those user groups has to change and be more of a municipal, provincial agreement.
Yeah, I mean, I can probably elaborate a little bit on that to Grant's point. I mean, there's probably a bit of a role for the commission to play in that for those communities that don't have the internal capacity to do just that. I mean, we know who to speak to at, you know, DNR and all the other places. So it's different, obviously, for Mukta, and I'll say Fredericton as well, because they have a bit of a different capacity to be able to handle that. But yeah, I mean, to your point, I mean, there's I guess as a community, my first priority is always the, you know, probably I'll call them the walkers, the runners, the pedestrians, bikers, the non-motorized, because the two other groups are very coordinated groups who have a membership, and they generally will come to you and negotiate with you as in the municipality with what they would like to do for their members. Versus the other way is you want to develop an active transportation trail of sorts, biking, walking, you know, that sort of thing. You know, that's certainly a priority that's set by every community, and if they want to set that as a priority to link other communities together, you know, certainly that's something that each community has to think about. You know, what I can say, for example, in this situation, I do Jihad's head in the right direction, is that, for example, Fredericton and Oromocto are already discussing, you know, upgrades of an active transportation link. That's a bilateral conversation we're having, that we're both prepared to figure out what that agreement is and secure funding as a result and go ahead and get it done. That is not a regional project, but it is something that over time, as those links get connected bilaterally from community to community, then all of a sudden you start to develop that network, which may take on a more regional flavor. We don't mind trying to help folks who want to have those initial bilateral discussions with, you know, this is our template, this is how we do it, because we also understand that we're different in the sense that we have more capacity to be able to have those bilateral meetings. And hey, look, I fully appreciate there's a lot of communities out there that have one employee or maybe two. And this probably isn't the top of their list of things to get done that day. So that's certainly where we've got to jump in and try to help support that initial conversation, whether it's a bilateral one with DNR, if there's an existing trail, or just a bilateral one to say, hey, New Maryland, do you want to connect to Hanwell through a walking path? Is that high on either one of your respective priorities? It is, okay. How do you need help? To Jihad's point, then it's starting to talk more specifically about where would the best location be? Who owns all the properties? Is there going to have to be environmental impact assessments done? Chances are yes. In this day and age, you're going to cross a a pond or a stream or something, it's guaranteed. So those are all things that logistically do take time and effort, and I think that's where if we can create that, I don't know, high level idea of what that is, then we've done our job, and then we just allow the bilateral communities and help them as they negotiate. Because I will say, if those two communities want to make that priority one next year, they're gonna have to invest in it. That means, what does that mean? It might mean you might have to raise your taxes a couple of cents to invest in it. That is how it works, right? But if that's number one on the priority list, because you've heard from your community that you really want to connect, then hey, they know where their money's going. Those are good conversations to have. How does that go back to what we're trying to do here? Not sure, but I will say I'm quite surprised at how many connections there were already. I mean, I did not know this, right? So the map is interesting from the perspective of there could be some low hanging fruit out there, whether it be, hey, ATV association, we'd like to talk to you, Quad NB. Is there an arrangement that can be made with them?
Yeah, so I think that's when like government's reform, through the government's reform initiative that's created regional service commissions. I think the traditional like connections between municipalities were largely like large expanses, and the user groups were the drivers, because municipalities were only concerned really within their jurisdictions, where now we have regional government or former regional government, which to me is going to require a different mindset in terms of that regional government has to speak on speak on behalf of its citizens, that those connections have to be more than just snowmobile and ATV, right? And I'm not suggesting duplicating trails. I'm saying like the government's gotta say, like, you know, we've got to make sure that all have access to these things. And if there's speed worries and so forth, well, let's figure that stuff out. But I just think we're at the point now with regional service commissions where that relationship with DNR has to change somewhat. And it's got to be more directed by regional service commissions and those municipal members.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to both John and Grant, and that's exactly it. And Shahad, I don't know if we can go back to the planning slide there next step. But I think exactly what we're talking about here is have those discussions, bring the groups together, bring the communities together, bring everybody around the table, all the key stakeholders. And when I say all, that's everything right from, some of these may even require federal government intervention and assistance in terms of that. The thing that's attractive from a regional standpoint is looking at how we can establish a mechanism for accessing the cost shared funding streams. Because more and more we're hearing from different levels of government that when you're coming, communities are hearing, well, where are you with that regionally? What are you doing regionally? We've heard that under, whether it be community development, whether it be economic expansion or economic development. We're hearing that now more and more, because what they're trying to do is get that, to your point, Grant, that collective vision. And how does that work, and how are we doing it differently? And so I think there's some real, in terms of that, I'm always thinking about how do you progress in your region? How do you progress in your community? And I think there's an opportunity here to take this and look at it and eventually come to the board with a recommendation on the regionality of the project, like an overall project. I'm not saying it's gonna happen year one, may take till year 25, and like John said, it's a long game, you're playing a long game this one. But the reality is we have to start somewhere if we're gonna build something together, and if we start building it, then at least we know where we're going, and we have a project that will bring the region together, and this one seems to have a lot of people chatting. I've been out in a number of communities lately. And which one point, one of our directors had me out for the afternoon to show me on a quad, the connections in their community. And where they would like to connect to and what some of the things are, some of the things I observed on the trails. Were things like signage. Better signage would make a huge difference for a lot of people. There were the issue of shared trails. A lot of people out there walking, a lot of quads coming along, but people were being, people were being respected, especially the walkers, people were being very respectful when they were approaching. So it's not to have dust flying up and everything else around the people that were out there. So a lot of good opportunities, a lot of beautiful, nature, if you will, to explore through the trail system in New Brunswick, especially in our region. And Grant, just that other point, when we started to look at this, to try to look at that first low hanging fruit of connectivity, when you look at that last page of the map, that's just part of the beast. And then you gotta straighten those lines up, put them along to which route they run along or where they were, if they were on the old rail bed. Are they on the trail, what is it? Are they part of the MB trail system? Are they part of the Canada trail system? It was a beast to say the least. So, and I wasn't trying to rhyme there, but anyway, but moving backwards, if we put the right plan in, and we had those discussions, put the right plan in place, come up together with a funding mechanism that can help one another. And that's the big players too. That's the Oromocto and the city and those big players. We got some communities that are in big growth mode. We saw that through our budget process that, some communities are growing. And then we find that mechanism to implement. So when you're ready, we've either helped you with a plan or you have a plan or you're already advanced. To John's point, this community's already advanced. Well, maybe they're one of the first ones out of the gate that we help find that funding mechanism to lower your burden on it. And we help bear on that,
I mean, yeah, and to that point, I mean, I'll admit, we don't need that help. We can secure the funding. They're eager to help see a bilateral project. And so, but that being said, if there's communities out there that don't know those players, I mean, RDC is on my phone, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
it's a phone call away. I mean, and so it's a bit different. We understand. The other part that plays into this, that from a municipal standpoint, is when we talk trails, there's also synergies around tourism and economic development, right? And so those are also things that when we talk to our tourism folks and we are active folks, and so there's synergies that can be brought as part of a project that way. And yeah, you're right. Some of the first things we'll start with that are low hanging is trail surface so that it's standardized and signage. And the reason for that is that then for those who are using the trails, there's no guessing, because we do have people who stop at certain points and around the airport go, can I go out there? They don't know. The answer is yes. And then the next thing they want to know is, well, how far is it to something? So we can say Hazen Park is 11 kilometers, or Dairy Delight's 3 kilometers, and then you have wayfinding, because what we do find is from a tourism point of view that drives people, and you see it, say in Fredericton, for example. I know people that will bike to the landing in Marysville, and 10 years ago, they never would have went past that old train bridge because they had no idea where that trail went. Now every Sunday they're biking out to the landing because that's a little spot to coffee. And so there's economic development opportunities and there's tourism opportunities. So those are the synergies that, communities want to start to look at and approach. And if there's some way to connect them all together, then sure, that becomes a regional approach. But it usually starts as a bilateral approach. And again, if this group can help connect those dots for those who are less able to do so, then that's also great. So it starts with, yeah, just some basic things like that. I think all of it's doable. And again, I'm just super surprised at how much connectivity there already is. So there could be some simple discussions with some user groups and communities who just say, hey, Quad NB, what would it take for you to connect this trail through to the community next door? I mean, you'd be surprised. They raise a lot of money. I've never spent 1 cent on the ATV trail that goes through Oromocto. It's all through Quad NB. Now we have an arrangement because they use our property in certain cases, and that's maybe a bit more unique in Oromocto than it is in other communities because they don't own as much property as we do. But again, those groups, if they want to use my property, they end up paying for it.
Well, so in the next steps aspects, we have this meeting and bring people along, just what you said. By looking at this map, you didn't realize how much connectivity there was. So there may not be as big a project. It's a big project, but may not be as big because there are all so much connecting.
Right.
So if we get the groups that are using them together and saying where we go, how we do it, you may be able to do this better than.
Yeah.
Quicker than later.
Yeah, and the only other point I'll share that I feel is part of this group, to Grant's point, is I too absolutely feel that at some point in New Brunswick, we have to get people used to sharing. We just can't afford to build 3 different trails for snowmobiles, ATVs, and walkers. We're not, it doesn't economically make sense, but where we can, that's where want to use wayfinding and signage to be clear, like, oh, you're entering a section of trail that's shared with snowmobiles, ATVs, maybe both, maybe only certain times a year, so that at least those groups know, okay, I'm now entering a place where I might have to share the trail. And it's certainly a sticky issue amongst communities because nobody wants to share, quite frankly. But the reality is we have to get to a point
The
where.
reality is, if I live in Shippigan and I wanna go somewheres by trail on a tour, I'm bringing my money with me. That's going into the community, so it's tourism, economic development. And you should be able to do this in New Brunswick, because the mass area of our picture province that people wanna travel in. And people are paying good money for them quads.
Yes.
And that whole aspect, and that'll develop everything, so I think. To John and point of bringing everybody together, I think that's probably could be our next step. That's just my opinion. And I do own a big area of the group, so.
I think, Mr. Chair, if I may, more and more regional service commissions, more and more regions are being asked from an economic development perspective, when businesses are coming in, what can you show, like, whether it be mountain biking, whether it be on the quads, whether it be on the snowmobiles, more and more that's coming up. Talking to colleagues around the problem, that's why Western Valley has entered into, they're starting a project similar to this. To connect and develop and really get the connections going. There's nothing wrong with us, and as part of the work that Shahad will undertake, or sorry, Jim Jack will undertake, but hopefully Shahad will be the point person, undertake for us if we're in consensus, would be to take that and maybe have that conversation with Western Valley and the team there to see what potential synergies are between the two RSCs. nothing wrong at looking at the other RSCs all around us. We all have connections and connectivity, especially through multiple trail systems. So I think the more, to John's point, where we get some kind of a regional or provincial vision on it and that kind of core funding directed, I think we have an opportunity. But I guess in terms of that, Mr. Chair, we're looking for that, I guess, you know, the direction of staff, like to move forward with the project. We'll take that back to the board in our report, and then we'll start executing and coming back and updating this committee when and as appropriate on the process.
So
I guess for me, it's just to be clear, so I understand what are those next steps going to be?
Right here, I believe Shahad, isn't that
Is that?
this is the outline of what we're hoping to.
These are our suggested next steps. They're not written in stone. If the committee here wants to start with establishing communication protocols and starting the communication channels with the communities and the user groups and DNR and Quad and B and all the other stakeholders, then that would align with our suggested first step. But again, it's your decision, but this is like a high level roadmap of what we feel could be next steps. And the last bullet could happen concurrently as well, if there are cost sharing funding opportunities and if there are shovel ready projects that could benefit, or communities who are ready to start their plan, then there's that opportunity as well.
You know, I agree, like, the only thing I feel we're missing though, and maybe it's, doesn't need to be said, but I feel like when I say we, I mean, the service commission needs to have the vision in terms of not just connectivity, but like, you know, John, you both mentioned it, it's multi-use, right? And to me, there's no one gonna advocate for multi-use more, or nobody should advocate more than the regional service commissions and its municipal members. Because I've been to many, like, you know, like you said, out on the trail, the reality is everybody gets along. I've never yet seen any combativity on the trails, but I've seen it in boardrooms when it comes to planners wanting to have a quad specific route or a walking specific route, et cetera, et cetera. And I just think like that's, in my opinion, it's garbage, but it needs somebody to advocate, like, speak to that and not just go into a room and hear the same old thing and leave with like division. And I just think like this is the opportunity, now we have an opportunity with this regional collective to really get by that.
yeah,
And if I may, Mr. Chair, that's what this will lead to, is getting that vision for the region. So do the work, do some of the homework, do some of the demonstrate what it would look like in the planning, demonstrate what we can help with in terms of the funding, look at how we can implement, and come back to the board looking for that statement on the regionality of it, if you will, or the vision on it in terms of how we do. And that this committee will guide that conversation as we go through the process in terms of that. Sorry, that's just, I just wanted to make sure that was kind of clear, a little more clear than maybe what it was, so I apologize.
the thing that I have with this one seems to be going around and to it circle this way. I think that the meeting with the people that are using it may get to where you're at. Cause like you're jumping on the Transcanada Highway, whether you got a Subaru or Volvo or a Jeep, you're driving on the friggin' thing, 120 kilometers or 110 kilometers an hour. It's the same as the trail. It's one trail from Shippagan to Timbuktu. It's that trail used by all, instead of 2 or 3 trails, because it's my piece of turf. Like everybody work together, and it's a lot cheaper to do one than just to do 3. So I think that in order to get it done, instead of spinning our wheels, we need to get the meeting done with Quad NB and all the people that are using it in a room with a representative from the municipalities in our area and say, we wanna get it done. That Nike logo, just do it. I think
There's a lot of steps in there.
one step is having a meeting with a group of people. Let's just have that meeting and get it done and see what they have, because not another thing, but I went to Ignite 30-30 thinking I was gonna get told what it's gonna be, but they had everybody talking about it. Which I said, okay, that's a waste of my hour and a half thing, but it's getting done.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the thing, bring the people there that are part and parcel of it and get it done. That's just
Mr.
my.
Chairman, I think you're absolutely right. I think but we have to put in those proper protocols. We gotta make sure we all know who we're communicating with, test that, make sure people like John and folks at the city or folks in other communities that have done good trail work and stuff, that they know, okay, yeah, this is it. We gotta have the voice of, like, Grant saying, we need DNR, we actually need, most likely need DTI there as well. We need, there's multiple players in this field. And to your point, put that protocol together, make sure we got it right, execute, move to the next step.
Yeah.
And then keep coming back to the board till we get honed into that. What does that look like? Because then it's gonna be around that plan. Where do you go get your funding? And that's what we want to, and to get to implement.
Yeah.
And that's where we can help. And to John's point, maybe his community doesn't need a lot of help with that. But there may be opportunities uncovered through that in order to be able to bring it forward. And if that's it, I don't, John and I've known one another for a while, and I know he's astute with money and the financing in his community. So I think, that just makes perfect sense that we do it in the staged approach.
Yeah. I agree. And the stage approach is, me, I like to have a target. If I'm going something, I wanna have that target. So to make what you just all said, getting the people in place for a meeting on December 1st at the Woo Center, everybody's going there, and you have a month and a half to
Plan it.
get them people in place to get it done so that we're accomplishing something.
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that's how it should work, because we actually are doing something.
I think we're all I'm on the
That
same
makes sense,
page with
or-
Mr. Chair, but I don't know, you gotta ask the others.
Cause I know
You're
John,
telling me what
okay,
to
I'll use this one, John in the city of Fredericton, they'd like to have more tourism dollars coming into Ormonto and Fredericton, right? In order to do that, you have to have trails connecting, so it all leads to Ormonto, it all leads to Fredericton, it all leads to wherever you wanna go in the province. And know where you're gonna do it, so in order to get it done, everybody has to work together.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and that's the part that starts sometimes with those bilateral discussions, cause. If we all take care of our connections bilaterally, eventually we have something to speak to. More regionally speaking as well, and I mean. Having a meeting, yeah, there has to be a target, right, we have to have a target for what the meeting is and what we want to achieve from it, whether that be. We need these groups to tell us their interest in. These connections or lack thereof, or where it ranks on their list of. Upgrade priorities through the province, cause. Trust me, Quad NB has a list and they're gonna. From 1 to 100, and next year 1 to 10 is gonna get funded, and.
Yeah.
If you're 99 on that list, it's good for you to know.
Yeah.
Right, so then you can set your expectations to. Whether they want to talk to you right away.
Yeah.
And if you're 99 out of 100 on the list, chances are they don't want to talk
Yeah.
to you right away.
But if you're not in front of them, you're not gonna know that.
Correct.
So if you bring them to the group, then you know the planning aspects of it.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, probably a meeting like that can be achieved as sort of a, target for a round table of discussion and. And for me, the theme has to be, how do we share?
Yeah.
how do we share this network that we're starting to map out?
Yeah.
That's the key.
Yeah.
You can't, if everybody wants to go away and play in their own sandbox, it's gonna be tough, but if everybody says, okay, yeah, how can we share? Then there can be a future discussion, which might be productive, so start there. With the aspect of, we're New Brunswick, we gotta figure out a way to share, so we're not building 3 highways for 3 different modes of transportation, cause
Yep.
nobody can afford that.
Exactly.
So, Mr. Chair, if there's consensus to move forward, on the proposed next steps, we can, the first phase of that process, we can fund that within year and existing funding. There's no additional ask or request. And we would come back to the board with a report to do so.
I'm good with that.
Get
Is
consensus.
everybody around the table good with that, or
Get nodding.
Clinton, you have anything set?
No, I agree with everything, but we gotta quit talking about it and move it.
Clinton, exactly what I've been saying. Nike
I'm-
Vogel, just do it.
I'm with you, let's go.
Okay, so I think we should have some kind of a date that we go towards and have that meeting, so I can see the powers to be from Quad NB and Snowmobile Association and any other association that includes trails.
And you also want DTI, right? Cause DTI right now is running way backwards on their their highway use agreements. So they're backed up so far, nobody can get anything done.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think what maybe the most pragmatic approach, Mr. Speaker, or Mr. Chair, is maybe ask the Shahad and his team to go out, explore that option for the dates and come back and report to us at the next meeting. And then we have that target, we know when it is, that would be in a few weeks in October, so we're not far away from it, so.
yeah. Well, through you, Mr. Chair, we'll establish the communication protocol. I think the communities have to know first, then we engage the rest of the stakeholders and figure out a good timing for everybody to come and share what seems to be the next steps here and what everybody's bringing to the table, the role of every user group, and understand better their role.
Yeah, because we are into September. Up into new year, new money and new all that other budget aspect, so. We're gonna do something, it's best to know
Yeah.
sooner than later.
This is like landing a plane. It kinda, yes, everybody wants to land, but you want to land safely and it takes time. It's gradual work leading to ultimately building a network of trails that connects all the communities in the region. But it does take time, and understand where you're coming from. You want results. The nature of the beast is that many stakeholders involves funding, it involves buy-in. So,
But you can't get that by unless you get them together, Chad. That's the way it is. I'm into,
100%.
like, I deal with a lot of people on every given stage to get stuff together, and I think that's.
May just make a suggestion, and maybe I should do the soft humor, but Jihad, I just to that, the Public Safety Committee for the RSC is having an off-road forum on November 27th.
Okay.
You know, so that might be a good opportunity to bring groups together, or at least get in there and get before them and add something to the agenda.
I would be careful on that one, cause the public safety aspect is a prickly one, and I'd rather keep the planning and trail network access separate from those who are concerned over public safety, because there is a concern, because unfortunately I can't fix stupid either, in terms of those who just don't want to abide by the sharing rules and act disrespectful, and that's what you tend to have at those public safety groups, and not the people who really want to work towards a shared environment, but just, having the police at every kilometer of trail stopping the people who quite frankly are just being disrespectful, and they will continue to be no matter what we do. But some of the similar players may be in the room, we just might wanna have that as a separate.
Oh, it's a
discussion.
separate.
My 2 cents, because I know I deal with a lot of complaints over quote, public safety, so, you know, and it's a real, like, people who are pushing a carriage and a baby, and you got somebody going 73 kilometers an hour past them on a quad. That's public safety, no doubt, but, so those are things we have to contend with.
To your point, Chad, I'd just like to see a date. Okay, just like to see that date for that meeting. And we'll land the plane on that date.
Awesome.
Or crash it.
Or instead it's not.
Nobody wants to crash.
Listen, we're talking about rural roads, a thing, it could have to be a helicopter, not a plane, they land a lot of these.
But before we spoke anyone, Mr. Chair, maybe we should call for adjournment.
Yeah. Call for adjournment, anybody? Okay. So moved.